In today's show, Jerami Grant is a blueprint for the Blazers' young wings trying to find their shot in the league. Rayan Rupert's hard work is in the spotlight, and Scoot Henderson might be a little bit ahead of the curve thanks to the nerds. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. Coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, so make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen and tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, got a fun one for you on a Friday. We're talking about Jerami Grant as a blueprint for the Blazers' young wings. I had an interesting conversation with Jerami that I'm going to share with you to open the show. Then I want to talk about Rayan Rupert, who's in the spotlight because his hard work is finally getting to showcase itself on the main stage. And to close the show, the nerds, they think we're shooting too many threes. The nerds are usually right about this stuff, ahead of the curve. They say that the league has gone too 3-point happy, and I got some news why that might be meaningful for a certain Blazers rookie point guard. That's what we're going to do in today's show. It's a fun Friday episode. Let's start with Jerami Grant. Jerami Grant took 20 threes in college. 20. He was 6 of 15 as a freshman and 0 of 5 as a sophomore. He was a non-shooter. Did not make a three-pointer his sophomore year. He came to the league as a non-shooter. And he looked like it. During his rookie season, Jerami Grant shot 31.4% from the three-point line. In year two, it dipped down to 24%. Yikes. He was a non-shooter that was getting worse. He was, of course, playing for the process Sixers in a quite a situation. But Jerami Grant was a guy who couldn't shoot coming out of college, but had some promising tools, and couldn't shoot his first 2 years in the league and had some promising tools. He was going to eventually stick and become a valuable role player and then a handsomely paid one after that. But he knew he had to be able to shoot. And to me, doesn't that sound like a lot of his current teammates? If you're a longtime listener to the program or a regular listener, or as I like to call you, an everydayer, shout out to my everydayers, you know that one of the big things I've been thinking about during the stretch run of the season is the Blazers' young wings and who can separate and differentiate themselves. That's Jabari Walker, that's Toumani Camara, that's to some extent Matisse Thybulle, that's Chris Murray, and then all of a sudden it's also Rayan Rupert. It was a quartet, now it's a quintet. And what I've been so curious, and you can kind of drop Matisse Thybulle out, he's 27, but we'll talk about the quartet of Rupert and Walker and Camara and Murray. I'm thinking about here as we go through this. All of those guys do some stuff. And then the caveat is, well, right now they're not a shooter. If they could shoot, they would be this. If they could shoot, they'd be this. Jabari Walker's dipping down to like making a quarter of his threes. He does a lot of good stuff, but if he can't shoot, he's probably not, really limits his ceiling in the league. Toumani Camara is making more of his threes recently, but on low volume, and he's such a good defensive player that if he was a 3-and-D guy, he'd be like really solid in the league all of a sudden. Rayan Rupert, we just haven't seen him very much, but shooting will be a swing skill for him as well. And Chris Murray has a lot of defensive chops, and he's getting big defensive assignments, but he has not shot well in his rookie season. And in fact, some of his misses have been way off. So you're talking about toolsy forwards with varying degrees of athleticism and defensive chops that their swing skill is going to be shooting. Sounds like Jerami Grant. That sounds like Jerami Grant. That sounds like year 3 Jerami Grant. It clicked for him in year 3. In his third season in the league, Jerami Grant shot 37.1% from 3 on 114 attempts. This was in 2016-17. The volume we were just hitting the sort of the downhill slope of what was going to be a lot of momentum picking up with teams chucking away from three. But this was year two. This is what the 73-win Warriors team, this is a year after the 73-win Warriors team. This is the 3-point revolution has now taken hold. We've got a young dynasty. And Steph Curry's a 2-time MVP winner, and the league is going to bomb away from three, and we have just headed in that direction since then. More on that in the third segment. And Jerami Grant, all of a sudden in year three, traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder, is now a 37% 3-point shooter. So I was curious, how'd you get there? So I asked Jerami Grant about how he went from a guy who took 23s in college, shot 31% his rookie year and 24% his sophomore season in the NBA, to someone who now, in back-to-back seasons with the Blazers, has shot 40% from three on volume. He's been in the league a long time, and one of the reasons he's been in the league in a long time is because he's evolved. Jerami Grant told me a couple things. One is that he hired a shooting coach. He worked with John Townsend, who's worked in and around the league for a long time, worked for the Blazers briefly and worked for the Memphis Grizzlies briefly, and is a shooting coach. And Jerami Grant hired John Townsend to fix his shot. Some of it was that Jerami Grant was shooting on the left side of his body as a right-hander. He was coming across his face to shoot. He had to totally rebuild his shot from scratch, break it all the way down and build it back up to a point where it looked better. It was more aesthetically pleasing, so that could get help, as I discussed with him, help teams have more faith in it. If it looked better, teams would be more ready to believe in it, and helped him feel comfortable, improve the aesthetics while helping him find a comfort zone as a shooter. Totally rebuilds his shot. And Jerami Grant said, he said he had some stuff going for him. He said, I had the athleticism and I had some defense. And I'm going to quote here. But to be a great player in the league, I had to shift that and be able to shoot. Doesn't that sound like his current young Blazers teammates? I had to shift that and be able to shoot. I joked with him that it was the $200 million skill. Jerami Grant, sitting on about $250 million of NBA contracts. It's worked out well for him, transforming to become a better shooter. And in year four, his fourth season in the league, he didn't shoot very well, but from basically year 5 on, he's been a solid shooter. And it's been, he had a down year in Detroit one season, but he's a legitimately good shooter. So where does it start? You hire that coach, get in the gym, and the reps matter in the summertime. That was a big takeaway from talking with Jerami about this. The reps matter in the summertime. He says it starts in the summer, but the game reps is what gives you true confidence to keep shooting. I'm a big believer that the most skill work NBA players can, the place where they improve, where an individual NBA player improves their skill the most, is in the summertime. That's when you can improve your ball handling. That's when you can improve your shooting. Those summer months. Summer is serious. That's when you find out if guys are going to be able to stick in the league, is how much can they improve when you don't play basketball 4 times a week in 4 different cities. When you actually have time to go to the gym and get that work in and work on you and your game and skill work, right? But to be able to do it, according to JG, skill work is important. Working with John Townsend and rebuilding a shot was important. The reps gave him confidence that he could do it. But it wasn't until he started seeing that ball go through the net in Oklahoma City that he said, yeah, I'm a shooter. I'm going to be a shooter, and this is going to be part of who I am. It's going to be my identity in the league moving forward. I can do this. It strikes me that this is a huge summer for Jabari Walker, and a huge summer for Tamari Kamara, and a huge summer for Chris Murray, and to some extent throw Rayan Rupert in that as well. This is when young guys make big jumps. They make big jumps. But the reps matter. And I think to end the season, the final 21 games, the Blazers are going to have an opportunity for the young guys to get reps. They're not going to have the skill work built in, and then next year, who knows what the reps will be. At some point, probably in the very near future, the Blazers are going to have to make tough decisions about which young wings are still on the roster, which young wings are not. They got draft picks, and they're going to have to make some decisions about how many rookies they are willing and able to bring in, and how many young players that are currently on the team do they want in the future. I don't think they have to immediately make those trades, but certainly there could be a situation where some young players they make a decision on as early as June of 2024. The swing skills matter. Jerami Grant is a perfect example of it. He was an interesting role player, an intriguing, really athletic, long, rangy defender playing in Philly. And then he found his role in OKC as this back line, kind of even playing a little bit of weird small ball center in some of their lineups, and as a defender and an athlete. But the reason that he stuck in the league and that he was so good on those OKC teams and then eventually on those Denver teams is because he could shoot. It's the swing skill. It's what changes the trajectory for these guys. Grant did it by getting in the gym with someone who could rebuild his confidence, and then you gain the confidence by putting in the work, and then you keep the confidence by having that positive reinforcement in the games. The Blazers are going to have a chance to have some positive reinforcement. Young Blazers are going to have a chance to have some positive reinforcement in the games, but this summer is going to be huge for them. Jerami Grant is the blueprint. He's the blueprint. He's the blueprint. You can be a non-shooter and figure it out. It's one of the skills you can definitely improve in the league. And Jerami Grant is proof of it. And if Jabari Walker and Toumani Camara and Chris Murray and Rayan Rupert are going to stick, I would talk to Jerami Grant about how he did it. I'll talk to Jerami Grant about what the work looked like in the summertime, what the confidence felt like in the fall. He's proof that you can get there. They got to follow that path. Jerami Grant is absolutely the blueprint for those youngsters. In the second segment, I want to talk about Rayan Rupert specifically. Speaking of youngsters, I want to talk about Rayan Rupert. He's in the spotlight, right? Because when I asked Chauncey Billups about Rayan Rupert and where he's improved, Billups gave a glowing answer about how not only had Rupert improved in every part of his game, every facet of his game, but he was the hardest worker on the team. Glowing praise from the coach. Let's talk about the youngster to close the show. A teenager getting an opportunity for the Blazers down the stretch. Join me in that second segment, won't you? But first, I want to tell you about eBay Motors. They've teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. Whether you're prepping for daily fantasy or you're in the heat of the playoffs in your season-long fantasy team, every week right here, I'm going to provide you with players that are guaranteed to fit your roster. So let's see who Josh has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. The name you need to know, Kyle Anderson. The big news in the NBA today, you were listening to Friday, March 8th show, and on Thursday, it was announced by the Minnesota Timberwolves that Karl Anthony Towns has a meniscus tear in his knee and is undergoing surgery and will be reevaluated in 4 weeks, a month away. 4 weeks is basically the start of the playoffs. Towns out for the remainder of the regular season, meaning he's out for the remainder of your fantasy season, no matter when it wraps up. So why not get one of Joshy's picks? Kyle Anderson, who moved into the starting lineup tonight for the Wolves with Towns out of there. He's going to see a larger role. He started the first game. Josh notes that, because Josh is the best at this, that the Wolves only play 2 games next week. So if that is meaningful to you in your fantasy world, just know that. But Anderson's gonna fill up the non-scoring stat stuff. He's gonna rebound. He's gonna pass, and he's gonna play big minutes now with this opportunity. He fouled out in 27 minutes on Thursday evening, but if he doesn't foul out, he's pushing 30, and he's going to get you those secondary non-scoring stuff. So Kyle Anderson, a name to know. Josh Lloyd from Locked On Fantasy Basketball is going to help you win that fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows the championship is about each player being a perfect fit. It's the same with your vehicle. With over 122 million parts to choose from for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Whether you need brake kits, LED headlights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever it is, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, baby, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right. Let's talk Rayan Rupert. So, he's let's start in a little further back with Rupert. Go all the way back to Monday's game. He plays against the Minnesota Timberwolves. He hits 3 threes, one off the dribble, one off a little bit of like a step back, one off a little bit of movement, a standstill 3. He scores off the bounce, driving to the rim. He's playing competitive defense. He's 19 years old. He's got extremely long arms. The Blazers say that he's grown a little bit even since they've signed him. And that Monday game was a culmination of a lot of like, so where is Rayan Rupert? Because over the last maybe 6 weeks, as the Blazers have been really beat up, it's finally been appropriate to be like, hey, why isn't Rupert playing? Because if you go further back than just Monday night and join me in the actual Wayback Machine, when I was first encountered Rayan Rupert in Summer League, he looked bad. He looked bad. I think, I knew the name, I guess, from doing draft stuff, but I hadn't watched him. I hadn't seen a single minute of him, even in the sort of my YouTube scout, right, of Rupert. But I watched a 12-minute video on him once the Blazers drafted him, but I hadn't seen him play a game until Summer League. Gets into Summer League and it's like, oh, he can't even dribble. Like, he's a long way away. And then not only is a long way away, the Blazers have a bunch of young wings that are ahead of him. The aforementioned guys from the previous segment with Walker and Kamara and Murray are all going to be ahead of him in the pecking order. Matisse Thybulle is going to be ahead of him in the pecking order. The Blazers had 4 guards that are all going to play serious minutes. So Shaedon Sharpe was going to play a relatively significant portion of his minutes when the roster was healthy at small forward. There's just no time for Rupert to play. So between how bad he looked in July and how clearly buried he was as a second-round teenager on this particular roster, I didn't think we'd see much of him. But it was only till recently when the injuries hit the Blazers and that it started to be like, hey, I'd love to see Rayan Rupert play. And he gets in on Monday's game and he plays pretty well. And he gets in Wednesday's game and he didn't play particularly well, but he got a real opportunity and they asked him to guard Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and it's like, hey, he's getting his chances. So I asked Chauncey Billups after the last game, where have you seen Rayan Rupert improve the most? Like what has been the spot since from July to now where you've seen him improve the most? And Billups said, everywhere. In fact, let me play you Billups' response to my question after Wednesday's game against the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Seriously, everywhere. He's our hardest worker. Nobody works harder than Rupes. Nobody puts up more shots than Rupes. Nobody comes back at night more than Rupes. Rupes is our hardest worker.
Was that true in July?
Yes. Yes, but what he didn't have in July was game minutes, right. But he's improved everywhere. His understanding, has improved. His shot has really improved. His dribbling has really improved. I really think sometimes, because I'm out there and I'm hollering at him, and I really think the language barrier, as fast as we could, I don't feel like I talk fast or us, but when it's not my language, it probably needs to be a little slower. Well, that can't really happen when you're in the hit, So I think that kind of has led to some of his breakdowns out there as we try to change up stuff and change up covers, and he's also very aggressive. So he's into the ball and he can maybe not hear the change. But every mistake he makes, which is what I love about him, and I tell him that the mistakes that he makes them aggressively. And he's fearless, man. He's fearless. So I think he's improved all over the place. He really has, but he's worked for it, man.
The hardest worker on the team. The hardest worker on the team. Nobody comes back more often. Nobody gets more shots up. And you know why I believe it from Chauncey Billups? Because I've saw how raw and how far away Rupert looked in July and to where he got here, to where he is in March. I'm not sure that I, am watching him this week and say like, oh, he's a star in the making, but he looks like a really intriguing young player. He's 19 with a bunch of tools, right? If he follows the Jerami Grant blueprint and becomes a pretty darn good shooter in year 3 and beyond, he's going to have a long NBA season, and hopefully, if he's successful as Jerami Grant, will get a whole bunch of money for his troubles. I think it is telling that it's like, Billups is really good about praising his guys, right? He's pretty positive. I've mentioned on the show before, this like the thing I like most about Billups is that I think he's pretty honest. Sometimes he's like, we played well when they don't play well, but for the most part, when you ask him a question, he gives you like, he sells it straight. When I asked like, where has he improved? I thought he was going to talk about more how he answered my follow-up question there when I said, was he always like this? And he says like, yeah, he was, but like the difference is he gets game reps. I thought it was going to be more along those lines, but instead it was like, he's improved a lot, and he's improved a lot because he's put the work in, and he's proud of how much work he's put in. It was effusive praise, and it was immediate effusive praise, mostly unprompted. Like I asked a question about him playing better and improving, but I didn't ask like, is Rayan Rupert the hardest worker on the team? That was unprompted praise from Billups. It tells you what he thinks about him, and I believe it. I believe it because Rupert probably had the longest way to go of anyone on the roster to get to where he is. There's some other candidates to be sure, but Rupert's in the spot. Rupert's hard work behind the scenes, and I think the way the Blazers handled it as well, right? They knew he was going to be buried behind the rest of the wing, so he got some time with the remix. He wasn't playing like huge minutes with the remix, but he was getting opportunities there, and they were prioritizing him getting on the court, playing real games with their G League affiliate, as opposed to him kind of like, traveling around the country and not playing for the big club. And he puts the work in behind the scenes, and he looks, he hasn't been spectacular, but he's been so darn intriguing. And I think those, as Billups said, like those game reps matter. It's like you put that work in, you get those, you build up your confidence, you play some games in the G League, and, you sharpen your skills, and then you get out in the court and you're like, oh yeah, I can do this. So when the Blazers asked him to go guard Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on Wednesday, he accepted that challenge. Now, he got cooked by a dude who might win the MVP of the league, but just the willingness of the coaching staff and the enthusiasm of Rupert to accept and go after that assignment and go get it tells you what kind of guy he wants to be and tells you what the kind of guy the Blazers hope he can be. Ties back into what Jerami Grant talked about with me in that first segment. You get the work, like you get the confidence from the work you put in behind the scenes. You get the confidence from going back to the gym at night. You get the confidence from getting shots up. That's how you build it. And you keep the confidence by getting opportunities out on the court and getting that positive reinforcement. And Rupert is doing that. And his hard work is getting the spotlight. And I hope, regardless of how much healthier the Blazers get over the stretch around the season, I hope Rupert, they can figure out a way to get him regular minutes most nights because he is intriguing, and the more time right now is the perfect time to send a 19-year-old out there to figure it out. It's a perfect time for it. The health of another 19-year-old, Scoot Henderson, I hope just gives Rupert more opportunity to kind of go chase it down, right? To go see if his hard work can continue to pay off. Just a fun little story, and I wanted to share Chauncey's input because I thought it was an interesting, an unprompted praise really tells you how much Billups has appreciated how far Rupert has come from a very deer-in-the-headlightsy summer league to like a really intriguing week here in the first week of March. Okay, to close the show, the MIT Sloan Analytics Conference, which is like the sports analytics, I was going to say Lollapalooza, but it's a conference for sports analytics enthusiasts to share the sort of the research du jour and trade their thoughts on the latest trends across sports. And there was two the writers I read regularly wrote about it, and I think there's some interesting findings about the league shooting too many three-pointers and why that might be good news for Scoot Henderson. He might already be ahead of the curve in terms of market inefficiencies. Let's talk about that to close the show. But first, let's talk about LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It's not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals that you're just not going to find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all of that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours when they post on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that if you are a small business owner or running a small business, that you're wearing a lot of hats. So you just might not have time or the resources to hire. So they're constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They've even launched a feature that help you write out job descriptions, making the process quicker for you and easier to find the best candidates with swiftness. There's over 2.5 million small businesses that are already using LinkedIn for hiring. So why not get on board? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. The good folks at Sloan, the analytics conference held at MIT. The nerds went to Boston, and they talked about shooting three-pointers. I first read this in a story by John Hollinger on The Athletic, and I'll have both stories I'm about to talk about here, John Hollinger's stories and also the True Hoop story from Henry Abbott's, linked in the episode description. Whether you're an audio listener or a YouTube listener, is linked down below. Just go check it out. Or I don't know what direction it is if you're an audio listener. In my podcast app, it's linked next to this. But I first read about this in Hollinger's weekly roundup. He writes a column each week, and he reporting live from Sloan or returning from Sloan. And Hollinger wrote an interesting thing about how for a long time, and he was maybe the main proponent of this in the analytic circles, was that the strongest correlation between one of the strongest statistical correlations for winning was just 3-point attempts. Not makes, attempts. If your team shot more threes and limited the other team from shooting threes, you were going to win. He mentions like converting Marc Gasol to shoot three-pointers because that was like literally just volume of threes was one of the strongest correlators to winning. Brook Lopez, everyone likes to point to sort of the late season evolution of late career evolution or, mid-career evolution of Brook Lopez. Unlock these dudes. Let them launch threes. Now everybody launches threes. Everybody does. And Hollinger says that with a league average I'm quoting here, league average at 36.7% on threes and 54.5% on twos, we've roughly hit the threshold where a typical three no longer has an higher expected return than a typical two. Said, oh, that's interesting. We've reached the diminishing returns era of launching three-pointers. You got to make them. Everybody shoots them, and if the league average is just under 37% on three, but everyone's shooting 40 a game, there's probably a market inefficiency out there on just getting layups. The league has always prioritized layups. It's always been a layup league. It's just we've cut out the mid-range so heavily that every jumper that if you can't get to the rim, teams are taking threes, and where guys stand has drastically changed. So like every role player spaces to the three-point line, and some teams say like some of the D'Antoni Houston teams like do not cut into the paint. James is going to drive into the paint. You are going to stand at the three-point line. Don't clog the lane. But everyone has always prioritized layups and threes. It's just we've probably gone too far at over-prioritizing threes. And so when I read Henry Abbott's piece on True Hoop, that kind of Hollinger cites a paper that was discussed at Sloan, and then Hollinger just straight up breaks down the paper for you and even links to the abstract if you want to read it. Again, those stories are linked in the episode description. Two researchers from Syracuse, Ehrlich and Sanders, which kind of has a real Shakespearean vibe to me. Ehrlich and Sanders found that for a half decade, 5 years, teams are hurting themselves by shooting too many threes. Quoting from their writing here. We find a significant and deepening three-point dispremium at the league level since 2018-19. That's the sort of end of the Kevin Durant Warriors dynasty season. In 21-22, this dispremium swelled to negative 0.066 points per three-point shot. And Abbott goes on to explain, because that number might not mean anything to you. Basically, for every 15 threes, you are losing a point relative to the average two. And the reason that you're losing a point relative to the average two is because of free throws. Getting to the free throw line is incredibly important, and because teams shoot so many threes now, and you're less likely to get fouled on shooting three-pointers, you are losing opportunities to take twos that you hit at about league average 54.5%, plus when you factor in the added chance of getting a free throw on the 2-point shots because you're getting, into the paint, closer to defenders, you're not taking jumpers, you're driving, etc. You are losing points on shooting threes. Here's the thing. And Abbott writes the following. The Syracuse researchers took a page out of Hollinger's book and said, essentially, you'll win more if you choose more efficient shots. What's changed is the definition of efficient shots. It used to be simply threes. Now it's about shots that you earn, the shooter, the most likely points when you're shooting, with your shooting ability, and free throws are factored in. Teams still need to shoot a bunch of threes. It's not like drop down to 12 a game back from the early 90s. You don't even need to go back that far back. Early 2000s. It is the sort of in this post-Steph Curry era where teams are taking 30 and 40 threes a game. It's that probably maxing out around 30 is probably better if you don't have the shooters and if you can get to the rim better. Like Boston is, the Celtics are going to be the best team in the league. They launch threes more than anyone. They have a bunch of dudes who can shoot. They're crazy on offense, and a lot of it is because they shoot so many threes and they have so many dudes who can do it. If you have the personnel to do it, it's probably still valuable. That matters. But on the whole, the research says we've probably gone too far. A dispremium, a word I didn't know until I read Henry Abbott's piece, a dispremium on threes. So that brings me to Scoot Henderson. Scoot has not been a good offensive player. He's shown some flashes, but on the whole, he's been downright bad. I think it is uncontroversial to say he's been bad on offense as a rookie. But the one thing that Scoot does at a high level on offense, the one thing that he has been above average at, he doesn't shoot well, he's really bad at making layups, and I think the layups thing is really is going to be the swing skill for him. If he can't finish, he can't play. But he draws fouls at a high level. There are only 12 players, rookies or sophomores, in the NBA currently who draw fouls at a higher rate than Scoot Henderson, who play regular minutes. He's above average at it. He draws shooting fouls at an above average rate according to Clean and Glass. He draws non-shooting fouls at above average rate according to Clean and Glass, and he shot way better from the free throw line recently. Scoot Henderson's best skill is getting fouled. And if the market inefficiency is taking more twos, getting more shots at the rim, or moreover, getting more attempts and making more plays, and I think it's less about the type of shots you shoot and the aggression that you play with, making more plays to draw free throws, making more smart plays that would be more likely to draw high value shots. And for Scoot, that's going to be getting to the free throw line. He might be a better offensive player. He might have cornered a slight market inefficiency that the league will eventually catch up on. We're shooting too many threes in the NBA, and Scoot can't make layups, but what he can do is get to the free throw line, and there is real value there. And if he can, and to do that at his age, not yet 20, to be a guy who gets to the free throw line at above average level, bodes really well for him. The thing the thing I'm most excited about Scoot's offensive game is his ability to get fouled. And then reading this and thinking about how what if teams cut out 5 3-pointers a game in favor of getting downhill and getting to the rim? Well, the Blazers have someone who on their team who's already would love to play that style and has already shown an above average ability to get fouled despite not being good at making layups and despite everyone going way under and daring him to shoot threes. If Scoot improves a little as a shooter and a little as a finisher and continues to be a really high level foul drawer, the market inefficiency, the efficiency that the researchers say is waiting for you, the value of free throws, adding in shooting more free throws because you take more twos. And really it's because free throws are always wide open and always from the same distance. The value of shooting those free throws when you factor in twos, there's value there. Maybe Scoot is further ahead of the curve than we think. How about that how about that heading into your weekend? How about that? How about it? Maybe Scoot and those goggles, He knew what the nerds at Sloan were going to tell us. Again, those two stories, Henry Abbott and Hollinger's story, were linked in the episode description, and Henry's story has a link to the study if you're further curious. I hope you enjoyed this one. I enjoyed it. It was a good Friday show for you. Next week we'll do 5 more. I had teased that I was going to do an interview this week. It fell through. We had to reschedule. It's coming next week. It'll be in your feeds. I believe it's going to be Wednesday's show, but it might be Tuesdays depending on how things work. But look for that one. It's a fun one. You won't want to miss it. A guest that you will enjoy, I promise. Trying to nail down another one. So instead of 1 interview next week, we'll get 2, 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts. Also on YouTube, plus a couple folks joining me next week. That sounds like a bunch of fun. Don't miss it. Tell your friends not to miss it either. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.